Welcome everyone to the webinar series, It's Your City, Making It Happen, the work and the people who support it. I'm Marian Griffin, Board Chair for Hartford Next. Today, we will have simultaneous Spanish translations of this webinar by Alba and Otelia of Interpreter and Translations of Glastonbury, Connecticut. If you wish to listen in Spanish, select the world symbol at the bottom left of your screen and select the Spanish interpretation. So our co-host today is Mary Falvey from Hartford Next Chair. She's Hartford Next Chair of Communication and Marketing, and she will provide you with tips on how to participate in today's webinar on making it happen. Mary?
Hi, everyone. We are in a webinar format here on Zoom. So if you have a question for any of our panelists at any time, just go down to the bottom of your screen and hit the chat icon and type that in. And I'll be happy to relay your questions and comments to the panelists. Also, keep your chat open because as our panelists mentioned, websites or other things that you can download, we will put that in the chat for you. Also, right before, about 15 minutes before we end, in the chat, we will put in a link to a survey for today's session. We would greatly appreciate it. It will take you less than a minute to let us know how the session went for you, and especially any ideas you have for upcoming workshops. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Mary. And just a little bit about Hartford Next. Hartford Next is the coalition of Hartford's neighborhoods and the revitalization zones in the city of Hartford. And let me just go to the beautiful slide. These of the NRZs is what we call them. So the mission for Hartford Next is to be the collective voice of Hartford residents and stakeholders to strengthen and grow our community. And our purpose is really to bring people together to listen, encourage, negotiate, and educate and lead to facilitate inclusion in our communities and to create an environment that leads to improvements in Hartford and its diverse neighborhoods. The Neighborhood Training Institute, which was founded in 2000, which is a long time ago, is Hartford Next communication and education programming arm. And we hold seminars, forums, workshops for both formal and informal training of Hartford residents. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Gill, who is our moderator today. And Aaron is a resident of Frog Hollow. He and his wife have been there in Frog Hollow for quite a bit of time, and they have 2 young sons whom they're raising in this wonderful neighborhood. Aaron is also the past chair of Frog Hollow. He just stepped down, and we'd love to retain him, but he has bigger and better things that he needs to do. And he's current vice chair of the City of Hartford Planning and Zoning Commission. And Aaron, by trade, is a licensed professional engineer, and he's formed his company, Wolverine Property LLC, where he is doing what many of the NRZs initially were started to do, was to improve and rehabilitate blighted properties. There's more to see about Aaron, and that information will be available in our PowerPoint presentation, which will be available to all participants at the end of the program. Aaron, I'd like to turn it over to you as moderator to begin this program. Thank you.
Great, Marian, thank you for that. And thank you for having me. Of course, Hartford Next has done a bunch of wonderful work for the city and continues to do so, including things like this. So when I was asked to be the moderator for this discussion, it was frankly my pleasure, particularly when I found out who our panelists were going to be. These folks are really the people that make our city run. And without all 4, frankly, of these women of color, the city would not run as well as it does. And I think one of the things that you'll see today during our discussion is that the city of Hartford employs a variety of people that also represent our city and our residents. And I think that's a wonderful thing to celebrate and just to note from the very beginning. So thank you all for having me, and I'm looking for the discussion and learning more from each of our panelists. On that note, I will quickly introduce each of the four panelists. So we're going to hear today from Thea Montenez, who is the Chief Operating Officer, Alexandra Lombardi, who is a Deputy Corporation Counsel, Marlene Fleeting, who is the Director of the Department of Human Resources and Labor Relations. And lastly, we'll hear from Ms. Janice Castle, who is the Director of the Office of Community Engagement. With that, may I introduce more in detailed Ms. Thea Montenez, the Chief Operating Officer. Thea, I will refer to you as the rest of our discussion here. Thea, as many know, is a Hartford native. Thea was appointed as the Chief Operating Officer of the City of Hartford by Mayor Luke Bronin and City Council back in February of 2020. Thea oversees nearly 1,500 employees across 13 departments and manages an annual operating and capital budget of $600 million, serving the 124,000 residents of our city. Prior to that, Thea was the first woman in the city's 236-year history to serve as Chief of Staff. Formerly appointed by former Mayor Pedro Segarra as the Director of the North Hartford Promise Zone, and previously she started a consulting firm for marketing, communications, and strategic planning, specializing in community affairs. In addition, Thea's worked at the Hartford Finance Services Group, leading local grant making and sponsorship programs. Thea served on a variety of not-for-profit organizations, including the Hartford Public Library, the Connecticut Public Broadcasting Network, the University of St. Joseph. In addition, Thea currently serves as a member of the State of Connecticut Judicial Selection Committee. Thea is a first-generation college grad and is a Syracuse University alum. Thea, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having us today.
Would you like to introduce kind of what it is that you do and share with us what your responsibilities are and what it means to be the Chief Operating Officer?
Sure. So again, thank you to Hartford Next and the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving for putting together this series of conversations with our team at the City of Hartford. The City of Hartford is not only my employer, it is my home. It has been the home to my family and I since the 1960s when they migrated from Puerto Rico to work in the tobacco fields. And we have been here ever since. My grandfather was a custodian in Hartford Public Schools, and my dad was a tradesman at the Hartford Public Housing Authority. So it's really a privilege to serve as the city's Chief Operating Officer. And so, in that role, the mission of our office is to serve as the principal managerial aide to the mayor. And so that means overseeing day-to-day municipal operations and coordinating special projects and interdepartmental initiatives. And so our strategic priorities for this year in particular are to lead those interdepartmental efforts to support the city's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's for the benefit of our employees, our residents, our businesses, and of course, our visitors. We will continue to focus on improving performance across all of our city departments. And also, again, try to collaborate as much as possible. And last but not least, expand our efforts to use data to inform decision-making throughout the departments.
And did you want to describe some of what those departments are that you oversee?
Sure. So this is a really tiny organizational chart. I apologize. But you can see here that within the office of the COO, there are several divisions, which include equity and opportunity, the North Hartford Promise Zone, the Office of Reentry Services, as well as operations, which includes our capital improvement program, our Office of Sustainability, and our 311 Service Center. And so outside of the office of the COO, there are 9 city departments, and you can see them laid out there. It is the Department of Development Services, the Department of Family and Children, Youth and Recreation, the Department of Health and Human Services. There is public safety, and there are 3 departments within public safety, right? Police, fire, and ES&T. That is our 911 dispatch center. And then there are the departments of Public Works, Human Resources, and MHIS, which is essentially our IT department.
So Thea, essentially all of those departments fall under your purview.
Yes, on a day-to-day basis, I really have, again, the fortune of working closely with all of these teams and the amazing people that they represent.
So as someone who's not, in the city government, that seems like a lot.
It's definitely not boring. In a city like Hartford, there certainly is a lot of activity. But again, we have a really incredible, committed team of passionate employees who, are doing their best every day to meet the needs of our community.
And is it part of your responsibility then to help allocate resources to these different departments?
It is, so I partner up with our department heads and, try to identify what it is that they need in order to deliver the services that our communities depend on. And so that's everything from, determining the number of staff, maybe, it is other resources that they need to support the work that they're doing. But yes, we work throughout the year to determine exactly how much funding it is that they require. And then during our annual budgeting process, we make the request for funding, of course, the mayor and the city council through that process.
And I think, it's no secret, right, that the city of Hartford has I'll say tight budget. I think that's something that we have learned over the years. So that to me almost sounds like, a form of problem solving, like you limited resources. How do we allocate those? Is problem solving something that often falls into your lap as well? Or do those things get left to, say, some of the department heads that report to you?
So, there are, again, to your point about the department heads, if something gets to me, it is most likely because, unfortunately, the folks, whether it is a department head or what have you, we're unable to figure it out. And oftentimes it's because it's a complex issue. And sometimes, it may be due to the fact that the solution requires just not city staff to try to solve for it, but it might require external partners or partner agencies to help us figure out that issue. And so by the time things come to me, it's usually because, it is complicated. And so I certainly spend the majority of my time problem solving, again, in partnership with the staff. And trying to figure out oftentimes what kind of creative out of the box solution can we come up with to try to solve for the issue at hand.
This is a question that I'll present to Marlene as well when we get to her, but it's my understanding, it's my impression that I think contrary to popular belief, in part because of our budget challenges, the city of Hartford runs very lean, that, we have a very lean staff and many departments are working maybe with lower staff numbers than they have in years or decades past. Are there efforts that are being made currently to work on increasing staffing levels?
Sure. We think about that in a couple different ways. One is, how do we recruit the best talent to want to work at the city of Hartford? And then second, how do we retain the folks that we have? And so, we certainly do that in partnership with human resources. And so we are constantly trying to figure out how to do both those things. And you do that in different ways, right? And so, part of it is our making sure that, when it comes to retaining our employees, that they feel as though they are being supported and valued, that they feel that there are opportunities for them to grow their careers, that there are advancement opportunities that we're providing them with. And so those are all the things that Marlene and I spend a lot of time talking about, trying to figure out, again, how do we make that happen, whether it's through expanding or enhancing existing programs that we have, or maybe creating something new.
with that in mind, how do you manage that? I mean, how do you balance, I'll say I mean, obviously, again, looking at this org chart here, you have a lot of stuff under you. You're a very high level person here in the city. How do you balance that high level strategic planning with the day-to-day tactical implementation, if you will, of whether it's retaining employees or whether it's problem solving or whether it's filling potholes in the street? How do you find that balance?
I do a lot of deep breathing exercises. If you come into my office, you will see there is usually some sort of eucalyptus oil or lavender oil, just to keep me calm throughout the day. I will say that I do not do this work alone. And I think the only reason I am able, to continue to do this work after 6 years and, throughout the many challenges we've faced is because we have an incredible team of people that are really passionate and committed and knowledgeable. And so, I feel really grateful I get to work side by side with the team that we have. It does require a commitment. And so it certainly is not a job that is Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. It is literally 24/7. Certainly my phone has rung at 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I typically start getting emails and text messages around 6:30, 7 a.m. It includes nights and weekends and holidays. So, you have to be a person who is comfortable with that and is committing to doing the work, even at times when it's not convenient. And again, I love, the city so much that, again, it's always felt like an honor and a privilege and never, burdensome to do it. And so, I've always committed myself to it no matter, what it's required.
Well, I will say we greatly appreciate it as one of the residents that benefits from all of that work. What type of systems? I mean, again, looking at the org chart, there's lots of departments here. You talked about the teams. What type of systems or processes have been implemented to help facilitate having all of these departments work together, having these teams that you're talking about working together, I would say effectively and efficiently, right? I mean, those are two important things. Are there processes and communication systems that have been set up to help facilitate that?
Sure. There have been several ways we've, done that over the past several years. One is investing in technology, right? And software systems that are connected to not just one city department, but to multiple city departments. So certainly this is not unique to Hartford. This certainly, I think, is the case in many communities, and I'm sure even at the state level, where each of the departments may have their own software systems. And unfortunately, the information that's collected in those systems cannot be shared with other departments very easily, right? So you may have 4 different software systems that contain similar information, but the information isn't able to be integrated so that you're able, to understand, right? To do some sort of analysis to figure out, whether or not, there are multiple departments all trying to figure out for the same issue, right? So we've invested in software systems where, our departments are able to share information with one another. They're able to more easily generate reports that are helpful to us to understand how, again, we can improve on service delivery. And so we'll continue to make those investments in that type of technology. The other specific thing that we've done more of is create internal working groups, again, that are representative of at least 3 city departments that are all trying to tackle an issue, but just in different ways. So for example, and I think you'll appreciate this in your role on planning and zoning, there are sometimes properties, it could be a residential property in the city that may be operating, illegally, in terms of, this is a real example, this is an actual problem, that may be illegally operating as an after hours club, right? Or some sort of entertainment venue. And so, there are multiple departments that would be involved in trying to address that issue. So it certainly, our police department are getting phone calls, right? When that residential property may be, playing music that is too loud, or there are large crowds of people that are gathering during late night hours. There is our Health and Human Services department that plays a role, because oftentimes at these type of illegal gatherings, there is food and beverage being sold, and you can't do that unless you're permitted to do that, right? There is our Department of Development Services, which includes our Division of License and Inspection, as well as zoning and planning and zoning and what have you. And they play a role, right, in terms of how a property can be used, or, for what purpose. And so, all of these departments, again, historically have tried to deal with this type of issue independent of one another. And it wasn't until, I would say, a couple of years ago, there was one particular property that was extremely problematic. And, it was really the police that were trying to deal with it, because I think at one month they were getting maybe, 60 calls for service. And so, somebody called me and said, hey, do you realize that we've got an issue here? I started digging into it, and I learned that there were 5 different city departments all trying to deal with this one property. So I've got everybody in one room, and we talked about how we could work together and share information to again try to deal with the issue. And within 2 weeks, we were able to shut the property down, at least as an after hours nightclub. I remember when the city staff went to the actual property to shut it down, there were homeowners that came out of their houses and approached the staff and thanked them, because for a long time those folks were not able to sleep, their children were not able to sleep, right, because of all the noise and the large gatherings. And so I think we know this work matters, and we know that there are folks depending on us to figure these things out, because it affects their day-to-day lives. And I think if we do more of that interdepartmental collaboration, I think we'll be successful, right, at addressing these quality of life issues.
Well, and I'll say, I have personally experienced some of that collaboration here in our immediate neighborhood. We had, it wasn't an after hours nightclub, but we had a house that I'll just say what was troublesome to the neighbors. And in the not too distant past, several city services worked together to effectively, I'll say, eliminate our issue. So, kudos for that, because it has, I've seen it personally play out in real life here, literally in real life. And it has, it's things that seem small that make a huge difference in quality of life for people like myself and all of my immediate neighbors. So thank you for that, because it is showing that kind of effective collaboration. I think most of my neighbors probably still understand the idea of the mayor and the city council, right? We get kind of their roles. How do you interact with the mayor and with the city council? How does your role interact with those two groups?
So I am in constant contact with Mayor Bronin. We work very closely together. Again, he oftentimes is in contact with our residents and our small business owners and our visitors. And so he's hearing direct feedback from the community, about what it is that they need and what it is we could be doing better or more of. And so, we are constantly having, conversations, discussions, and figuring out how we're going to, address those needs and those requests that are coming up. So Mayor and I certainly talk throughout the day. We meet several times, throughout the week. I'm really grateful for the partnership that we have with our city council. I speak to council president again, at least once a day, and I'm in contact with various city council members throughout the week as well. So it's just this feedback loop, right? And having those conversations and them sharing, what it is that the conversations they're having with community members, and figuring out together, right, how we can respond to the needs of the community.
And speaking of those needs, as we talked about kind of some of these specific targeted properties or targeted issues, again, I think many of the problems that some of my neighbors have all relate to, I should say our neighbors, right? That our neighbors have all relate to, a specific property or, a specific individual. How some of, so in your example of the neighbors coming out and thanking you, what's the most effective way for those neighbors to communicate that issue to city staff, such that we can get successful change, like the examples that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I would highly, highly encourage, whether you are a resident or a business owner or, a visitor of the city of Hartford, that if you have a request for a city service or you have a question and need information about city services, to call 311. And so 311 is a division that lives within the Office of Community Engagement, which is led by Janice Castle. And I know you're going to hear from Janice, in a few. But the 311 team, is available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. They are there to answer your questions and to also, receive whatever information it is that you have or request that you have, for city service. And that can be everything from needing to schedule a bulky waste pickup to, potentially trying to fill a pothole, or maybe you need a new waste receptacle, right? All of those services that the city provides, the 311 team is able to answer questions, direct you to the right folks within the city, and also create what we refer to as a work order. So on this slide, you'll see actually, this speaks to the 311 team. And just last year, the number of calls we received through the 311 call center. So in 2021, fiscal year 2021, we received over 167,000 calls. And you'll see on the pie chart, it's broken down by what those calls, represent. So many of those calls, about 96% of those calls were for information, and about 4% of those calls generated work orders. And so you'll see the breakdown of those work orders. The overwhelming majority of requests that we receive for service are related to the Department of Public Works. And DPW has a really big job. Again, I mentioned things like potholes and waste receptacles, maintaining our streets, right? Whether that is things like snow removal, that all falls within DPW. So it makes sense that the majority of requests that we receive, are specific to DPW services. And then of course, you'll see the other calls there, are related to Health and Human Services, and departments like Development Services. There are 5 divisions within Development Services, including the Housing Division and our housing inspectors. There's also Fire and the Parking Authority. And so, this team that we have within the 311 call center just last year alone, again, generated about 6,800 work orders for the various services that are represented there.
Well, Thea, I greatly appreciate you being here and sharing kind of all of this and helping us understand more what keeps you busy. And I think busy is probably an understatement. I'll take this opportunity to personally thank you for your efforts. You and I have had the chance to work together on some things over the last few years. And it's just refreshing to know that we have people in our city government that are responsive, that care, and that help us accomplish things and bring about positive change for our neighborhoods. I've seen that personally, many times when we've interacted, and only pretend to imagine that I can understand how much work you and your colleagues are putting in for all of us. So we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate the time. I will remind folks that are watching, there is quite a bit more information available regarding Thea and her work and her role in the slideshow that will be shared, included with this afterwards. And just say thank you again. And with that, it is time for us to move to our next panelist. So next we will talk with Alexandra Lombardi. Alexandra is the Deputy Corporation Counsel in the City of Hartford. Alexandra returned to the City of Hartford service in 2016 as Deputy Corporation Counsel. Prior to that, she began her legal career with the city in 2011 as an associate counsel. With Corporation Counsel, Attorney Lombardi manages the City of Hartford's in-house legal office and hires and oversees the work of outside counsel. Alexandra serves as a senior legal advisor to Hartford's elected officers, department heads, and other city officials. Alexandra is actively engaged in the practice of law with primary focus in the area of labor and employment. And prior to becoming the Deputy Corporation Counsel, Attorney Lombardi served as the Associate General Counsel to Governor Daniel Malloy. Alexandra earned a BA and JD from the University of Connecticut. I guess I'm supposed to say go Huskies here, but Alex, I know where I am. I know I'm in Husky land. Alexandra, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time. I know we demand a lot of our employees, our city staff, and I'm sure you have a busy agenda as always, but things like this definitely give those of us who don't work at the city, those of us that just, I shouldn't say just, but those of us that live here, an opportunity to really understand better how our city works and get to know the faces that do all the work for us. So we appreciate having you.
I'm so excited to be here. As I'm sure we'll get to in your questioning, Corporation Counsel's office is not really a public facing office. So I don't get many opportunities to interact and talk about what we really do. So this is a great opportunity for us. Thank you.
Well, and for me personally, you're probably one of the panelists that I haven't had an opportunity to work with at any time in my time here. So it's, I'm excited to learn more about you specifically and your role as well. So maybe you could start by sharing with us what it is that Corporation Counsel's office maybe in general does and what you specifically do.
Sure, happy to. So the Office of the Corporation Counsel is the city's legal office. We're comprised currently of 9 attorneys, 2 paralegals, and 1 administrative assistant. And so we handle all of the legal needs of the city of Hartford, either in-house with our own staff or by hiring someone outside to the extent that the question before us requires some specific expertise that we don't have. And so what that means is that when any department, elected official, board, or commission needs some legal advice, either they want to put forth a policy and they need to know, is this legal? Are there challenges that we need to be aware of? What are the pros and cons? We will give that legal advice. Perhaps it's that a department wants to negotiate a contract, and so we would serve as the legal representative. We would draft the documents. We would review contracts from outside entities to make sure that we're comfortable with them and that they serve the city's best interests. We defend the city in litigation. So when suits are filed against us, we'll obviously defend those suits. And we will occasionally, though the majority of our work is defense, we will occasionally bring suits on the city's behalf if necessary. And we also help in, Thea spoke earlier about enforcement and compliance efforts. She was specifically talking about some troublesome properties in the city, but that's one example of many where my office's legal expertise might be needed, and we'll serve on those teams to make sure that we're ready to take legal action if necessary.
Excellent.
Oh, and so you also asked you also asked what I do. And so you mentioned during the intro that my primary area of focus in my practice is labor and employment. And so in that capacity, I work very closely with the Department of Human Resources, on any questions that they have in hiring, in discipline of employees, in representing the city in contract negotiations, and then later representing the city before all administrative agencies and state courts if any of our actions are challenged.
So maybe not you specifically, but your department. I mean, I think this is probably a question I've heard from time to time. Would your department represent or be able to represent a Hartford resident? You know, if a resident said, hey, I need an attorney for something, can I call your office and you can represent me because you're the city's corp counsel?
Right, and we do get that a fair amount. Unfortunately, no. So we, in the Office of the Corporation Counsel, represent the municipal corporation. That means the city of Hartford and its interests. We do not represent any individual citizen of the city of Hartford. So really the only time that citizens have involvement with our office is if they're bringing a claim against the city of Hartford. They might have some interaction with our attorneys, but again, we would be representing the city's interests, not that of the individual citizen.
Okay. And from my experience on planning and zoning, you know, we often have a representative from your office attend our meetings, and if we have legal questions, we'll turn to corp counsel. Is that typical? Do all, you mentioned having 9 attorneys in the office there. Do all 9 attorneys attend certain board meetings? I mean, is that a normal part of the job? Is that just some of the attorneys? How does that work?
Every one of our attorneys is assigned to at least one. Most of them are assigned to multiple boards and commissions. And everyone is, for each board and commission, we have a primary attorney assigned who becomes really knowledgeable about what that commission does, what they're working on a day-to-day basis, who the board members are so that they can have those working relationships. And we also have a backup assigned because sometimes people are on vacation or unavailable, and we want to make sure that all of our boards and commissions always have someone that they can call on in the office who can support them. And so, yep, that's part of the job. All of our attorneys are assigned to at least one board or commission to provide legal support.
And how about you? What boards or commissions then are you a part of?
So currently, I back up Howard Rivkin, our corporation counsel for city council. I'm also working with the Police Accountability Review Board. And then I'm just generally the backup for all the other boards and commissions. I get questions from time to time from everyone.
Okay, that's fair. Well, and I'll put in a quick plug for our boards and commissions, because to that point, we have a lot of them and we have lots of open positions still for the city. So if you're a resident and you're watching this and you want to get more involved, that's a great way to start, in my personal opinion. Can you give us an example of maybe when another city department might call on your office for advice?
Oh, we get calls every single day. Specific examples without getting into details, that would be privileged. I mean, I gave one earlier. If there is something that a department wants to do, or they're getting a call from someone complaining about something and they want to know, can they take certain action? They would call legal and say, hey, this is what I'm contemplating. Is this something that I can do? What do I need to know before I do this? What are the risks of doing this? Is there a better way to do this? We'll give advice like that. I get a lot of calls from department heads when they have an employee who perhaps has engaged in alleged misconduct. And how do I go about investigating that? What are next steps? What might be the appropriate discipline? We get calls from city council because they would like to put forth an amendment to an ordinance or a new ordinance. Can you please draft something up? This is what I want to accomplish, but they don't typically write the language. We would do that for them and then work with them to make sure it's in line with all of our other local laws, state statutes, federal laws, et cetera. So those are just some examples of how we might get calls, but it really runs the gamut. And being a municipal attorney basically means going into the office every day with a checklist of what you want to accomplish and knowing that you will check none of it off because you will get a million phone calls that will take you in many different directions that you never expected.
It sounds challenging then to actually, so with that in mind, how do you actually get things accomplished?
Yeah, so I get most of my things accomplished on nights and weekends when people aren't calling me because just things get a little slower. So just things like writing and those items that really require quiet and concentration usually happen on nights and weekends. But you find time during the day, and you just are flexible and you roll with the punches. And occasionally a meeting ends earlier than you thought, and you get, a couple of minutes here and there to get things done. We all just make it work.
We always love it when the meetings finish early, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So it sounds then like you are required, in a sense, to have a pretty solid knowledge of not just city law, but also state of Connecticut law. I mean, my understanding is a lot of what we do from a municipality standpoint is governed by the state of Connecticut.
That's true, and federal law as well, because a lot of those laws impact the city of Hartford too. We're an employer, as well as a municipal corporation. So I don't want to give anyone the misimpression that all of the lawyers in Hartford Corporation Counsel's office have every state statute memorized or every federal law memorized. Part of the job means hearing the question, spotting the issues, knowing enough to know, okay, this is what I need to look at, and that's something I need to research, and saying, okay, I understand what you want to accomplish. I need to look into that and get back to you. So that's why it's fun and exciting, if you like to learn, to be a municipal lawyer, because in some respects you get to be that jack of all trades. But you have to be comfortable, saying, I don't know right now, but also having strong research skills so that you can go figure out what the answer is.
One of the things that I think I've learned since becoming a resident of the capital city here is that a surprising amount of what we can or can't do is governed by state law. Are there often times where, a city council member, to your example earlier, will call and say, hey, we want to do this, and you have to push back and say, well, we can't do that because by state law that's not legal? I mean, are there times where our city council or our staff get handcuffed on being able to do something that we want to do for our residents that we just can't because of we're handcuffed by state law?
Certainly, but I also think that, part of our advice is, part of our job is to say, okay, well, we can't do that because of this reason, whether it's state law or some other prohibition. But have you thought about this? I think part of our role in Corporation Counsel's office is to figure out what the end is. And maybe somebody comes to us with how they want to get there. And maybe that means to an end isn't something that can happen for any host of reasons. But, we can give the advice to say, okay, you can't accomplish that this way. Have you thought about this? And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. I mean, sometimes there's blanket prohibitions on doing a certain thing. But I do think that's part of our role, is to give that advice.
Excellent. As far as resources go, we've talked already, right, about the city being very lean. And again, I think that's a common misperception from people. But as far as I understand it, the city of Hartford runs a very lean show. When you have issues come up, or when you get, I'll say, overloaded, does your office have the ability to bring in other resources or outside resources?
We do, and it's a matter of necessity, in fact, in some instances. So just because of ethical rules that apply to attorneys, there are going to be times where our attorneys are conflicted out of representation in a certain case or representation of a certain person or employee. And so for that reason, we always have to have the ability to retain outside counsel. And then there are just times where it's really not the best use of resources to employ an in-house attorney with certain expertise, because that kind of a question in that area of the law doesn't come up often. But when it does, you want somebody who has really practiced in that specialized area. And that would be another time where we would hire outside counsel. So we do supplement our in-house staff with outside counsel, and it's a balancing act that Howard and I really think about, are thoughtful about, and have lots of conversations about, to make sure we are, appropriately using in-house staff and outside counsel to give the city the best legal representation possible.
Do you, and kind of speaking of bringing in folks maybe with specific knowledge and maybe abnormal, I'll say, laws, are there any out of the ordinary legal situations that the city's experienced, that you've experienced in your time?
Well, a global pandemic comes to mind.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, so it goes to what I said earlier about when you're a municipal lawyer, you think you're going to go in and have one kind of day, and it can be completely thrown off track. No one would have guessed that. I mean, Howard and I were very familiar with all of the emergency provisions in our ordinances and in state statute, but before 2020, an emergency was, when you thought of an emergency, you thought of something very different than something like coronavirus. So, all of a sudden the world is shutting down. We need to figure out as a city what to do to protect our residents. We're having conversations with the mayor and senior leadership about that, and what our legal authority is to take certain actions. We're interpreting executive orders that are coming out from Governor Lamont's office at rapid speed, and just kind of trying to navigate in a very quickly evolving legal landscape. So that's one big example that comes to mind, and there are a million little ones. Yeah.
Well, and Alexander, just because you've mentioned the name a few times, could you just clarify for everybody who you've mentioned Howard a few times, so maybe we could just mention who Howard is.
I'm sorry, it's because he's a man who really needs no introduction. Howard Rivkin is the city's corporation counsel. He has served as corporation counsel since 2016. We came in together that year. He has had decades of experience in public service, has lived in Hartford, for over 30 years all told, worked for the state of Connecticut for many, many years, worked on homelessness initiatives for a very long time, and again, came on as corporation counsel in 2016 and still serves as our corporation counsel today.
Excellent. Well, thank you as well so much for being here. I appreciate having a better understanding now of all of the many challenges your office has to deal with, or gets to deal with, I guess, for us on a daily basis. Try to, take at least one evening to yourself, I hope. We all have to find a little bit of balance. I realize that is harder and harder every day, especially in the middle of a pandemic, it seems. And honestly, Alexander, I don't think you and I have ever had a chance to meet face to face. So I will say officially nice to meet you. And thank you again for sharing with us with your insights. And again, thank you for the time, because, we all live very busy lives, and it is important for opportunities like this to share kind of, again, for our residents, how we manage to get things accomplished in the city. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I love talking with you. Thanks.
We'll have to do it more often.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think I at least got a chuckle from Marlene there. There we go. We'll move next to our third panelist of the day, Marlene Fleeting. Marlene is the director of the Department of Human Resources and Labor Relations. Marlene was born and raised in the city of Hartford and began working for the city in 2001. If I'm doing the math right, I'm an engineer, so I am. That means you've been with the city for 20 years. So congratulations on that, and thank you for that. Marlene graduated from Springfield College with a bachelor's degree in human resources. And prior to being selected by Mayor Bronin as the director of human resources, Marlene began her career as a cashier in the tax office. For many years, she tirelessly supported members of the Hartford Municipal Employees Association, Union, as vice president, and Marlene is dedicated to continuing to serve the city of Hartford and her community. As someone who has interacted many times with the folks in the tax office, I always appreciate how patient the staff there is with those of us that get to come in and pay our bills. So that was a great introduction to the city, I imagine, Marlene.
Yes, it was.
And now you get to hire. Now you're hiring all of your replacements in a sense, right?
Yes, I am.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Did you want to share with us a bit about your role and what keeps you busy day to day?
Yes, well, like you said, I've been here a long time with the city of Hartford, but recently joining the human resources team. And our role is we're responsible for the diverse workforce for the city of Hartford. And so we provide guidance, and we manage the hiring of new employees as well. We support city departments, We provide direct services in the following areas, such as compensation, classification, benefits, employee relations, labor relations, training, and development. My office consists of, if you see here, our org chart, we have the director, we have a deputy director, an assistant director, we have 7 HR analysts, we have a senior admin assistant, an admin assistant, and then we have our benefits administration team. And that consists of our benefits administrator and 2 staff as well.
So I guess, Marlene, one general purpose I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if a different department has an opening or is looking for a position to fill, I imagine their first stop would be to come to you or one of your staff members and say, hey, we need to hire?
Yes, they, if a department they have a vacancy, we have a vacancy report that we're responsible for. So during the budget processes, each department, they know what positions they need. And then they say, okay, well, it's time to fill, let's just say a laborer in DPW. The director would then say, okay, so he would come to human resources or let his analysts know, because our analysts each are broken up to have departments. So I have an analyst aligned to DPW, and he would contact him or her and say what he would like filled. And then we would go through the process to get that position filled for that area.
And from that point, what does that process look like?
Well,
so now your analyst has received, hey, we need to fill a position at DPW.
Yes.
How do we go from that to getting that staff position filled?
Well, there's in line now, as of 2016, we have a process called a PRC. We have a committee, and that's the Position Review Committee. That committee came on board in 2016, where the mayor said, okay, any position that, because of the fiscal crisis that we had underwent at that time, the mayor wanted to get a closer look at the positions and the spending for the city of Hartford. So all directors who want to fill positions, they put in a request to fill the position, and my team then looks at the budget. We look at all types of union implications, make sure that we can actually fill that position. And every Tuesday, the PRC team meets. That team consists of Thea, myself, Alex, Mayor Bronin, finance, and we go over the positions. We make sure that it's budgeted, right? OMBG checks that. The mayor gives his okay. And then my team then lets the department know that it's okay to fill. And we go through that process, which means then we post the position. The position is normally posted for 2 weeks. We get applicants in. If it's an internal promo, we post the position as well, internal or external, or sometimes both. And then once the position closes, we then look at the applicants that we receive, but then we go through a qualification process. That process starts with one analyst, and then we have a second reviewer, and then it goes to a higher level, which is my deputy or myself. We sign off. We then give a certification list to the department. That list, the department gets to see, okay, well, we have 5 candidates, and the department then gets to interview and pick the best selected candidate for their needs and their operational needs. And then they work with us and we do an offer letter. The candidate receives the offer letter. If they're selected, and then they come through and they start the process. We do a background check. We also do a physical, and then they're welcome to the city of Hartford. If they accept the job, they pass all of that, all of the background screenings. They come in, we take their picture, their photo, and we give them what they need to begin their career at the city of Hartford with a big smiley face saying congratulations.
And I will preface a little bit. I imagine maybe it varies some depending on the position, but is there a general time frame from when your office receives a request to fill a position to when an offer letter is put out? I mean, is that normally a 2-week process? Is that a 2-month process? Is that a 2-year process? What is there an average length of time that takes?
From the time that we receive the we post the job closes in 2 weeks. Then we go through the process. By the time because the department has to set up interviews and things like that. So it normally is about maybe like a month or so process.
Okay. And obviously, I think we all have seen right now the amount of job openings that are available, and we hear of the labor shortage on a pretty regular basis. What are you currently experiencing? What's your office currently experiencing in your efforts to recruit and retain existing city staff and personnel?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the labor shortage is out there everywhere. For the city of Hartford, we are experiencing it. I can say, having been here so long, that this is like now the times where you're seeing less staff and we're having to work more with less. But here at the city, I know one of all of our goals, right, including senior leadership, is to retain talent. And we do that by, I work closely with Thea and senior management as well, as far as doing, talking about trainings and opportunities and offering more educational opportunities to people. I mean, people can go and go to another organization for money or for more money. But one thing about it, you want to be happy and you want to be respected. And what we do here is we say, okay, we're going to try to give you the most that we can as far as compensation. But in addition to that, we're going to give you the opportunities to learn. We're going to give you the opportunities to excel. We're going to give you training opportunities. And I know personally, I also, with my staff, I make sure that they're in a great environment, just like all the other city directors. We make sure that they have what they need, that they have, our doors are open. As far as directors, we never close our doors and say, we're not here, you can't talk to us, we're always available. And we make all of our employees feel welcomed and valued. And I think that's a big key in keeping someone and in retaining staff.
Well, Marlene, one of the things I was going to ask was for you to give me the recruiting pitch so that anybody, watching who was considering a job. But I think you just did that. I think you just took care of that pretty well. I may consider filling out an application myself.
Yes, come on down. We have coffee too.
With that being said, I also think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but looking at our panel today and my experience with the city of Hartford is that we also have a very diverse workforce.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that's always impressed me the most when I interact with city staff is that we seem to have a great deal of folks from a variety of backgrounds. And I don't think you get that many places.
Right, that's true. I mean, the city overall has over 60% diverse group, and it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see, especially coming from Hartford. Born and raised in Hartford, I love my city. And when you look at this organization that I joined 20 years ago, it's still the same as far, it continues to grow with diversity, and it's great because you walk around and you see women and men in leadership roles that look like you, and that means a lot. That means a lot to a young person who started at 27 years old, when my son was 4 years old, who's now 24 years old,
And I touched on this in the beginning, right? But even looking at the panel today, I mean, when you talk about recruiting, look at the women that we have represented here.
Yes.
and the positions that you all sit in that really run our city. I have to imagine that's a pretty valuable recruiting tool for you in your office as well.
Yes.
And I think it speaks to a lot of the wonderful things that your office has done, both, with you in charge and prior to you being in that position. So thank you for that very much. Any last, recruiting pitches? And, I can't imagine you want to run through all of the open positions that the city currently has, but did you want to maybe share with people where they should go if they're
Yes.
looking for open positions?
Yes, definitely. You can apply for jobs at www.hartfordct.gov /human resources or Indeed jobs. You can also apply in person at City Hall. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, from between the hours of 8 and 5. We also have if you were to come, say you came into the city at 5:30 and no one, well, I'm always here, but let's just say it was a Saturday or something. Outside of our office, we have a table that has applications and interest cards as well. We also have a drop box. You can drop it right in. We check it every single day, 2 and 3 times a day. And if you are interested in a position that is not open and you want to express interest, we have what we call interest cards. So you can come at any time and you can fill out an interest card for any position, and you will be notified when that opportunity becomes available.
Awesome. And just off the top of your head, Marlene, any clue how many open positions the city currently has?
To date, like right now, we are filling 10 different positions, but meaning the titles, but it varies in the number because we have a continuous police recruitment. We
Okay.
we just did my team on Thursday and Friday over at Parker Memorial. We just had a 230 people apply for a City of Hartford police officer job. So we're continuously recruiting all the time.
And maybe just real quick, put in that plug of the recruiting for the police department. I think also the fire department as well, no?
Yeah, Hartford, right, the fire, you can come and fill out applications for fire. We are doing a continuous police recruitment. We're looking for young men and women to come and join our police force, filled with diversity. And we have a continuous recruitment. We have one that is right now open and it closes on November 30th. So come on down, get online, come in person, make a phone call if you have any questions. Our phone number is available as well, which is 860-757-9800. If you have any questions, we're here. We can answer questions and come on down. We would love to have you join our police force and any other department in the city.
Excellent. Well, Marlene, thank you as well. I know that like your colleagues, you also put in a tremendous amount of hours to serve us in our city. And we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate your time being here this morning. I think you and I also haven't had a chance to meet, I'll say in real life, but I look forward to that in the future. And thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you as well. And I would like to say thank you to the Hartford Next program, as well as the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. And thank you to Thea and Alex and Janice, because I couldn't do this without my team, the Human Resources team, and Thea and Alex. We do work a lot. We work very closely together, and they are phenomenal support systems. And I appreciate all of them. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Janice, Miss Castle, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So our last panel of the day is Miss Castle. Miss Castle is the director of the Office of Community Engagement. She was born and raised in the island of Grenada, West Indies, and I'm kidding, Grenada, West Indies, and migrated to Hartford in 1993. That's only going to be funny to Janice and I, but that's okay. Janice and her family migrated to Hartford back in 1993 in search of better opportunities in education. She graduated salutatorian from Weaver High in 1999. She's a first-generation college graduate, earning a bachelor's of science from Trinity College in biology. She earned a master's in public administration and a certificate in nonprofit management from University of Connecticut. And she currently serves on the board of directors for Rebuilding Together Hartford, UConn Department of Public Policy Alumni Council, and the West Indian Foundation. Janice's history of community involvement includes serving as the Urban League Young Professional President for 6 years and mentoring for Urban League Project Ready and Career Beginnings. And I will say probably being an active member of every single NRC in the city, which is how Janice and I first got to interact. And it has been a blessing since then. So we appreciate it, Janice. I probably have a decent understanding of your job, probably not, but maybe better than most. But maybe you could share with us what it is that keeps you busy. I won't even say 9 to 5 anymore, because we know that you all work much more than that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear from my colleagues, because it sounds like we all do the same thing, walk into the office with a list, and then that goes right through the window. So thank you again for having us this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. So my office is really responsible for helping direct residents to the resources that they're looking for, or the information that they are trying to acquire. My team consists of community liaisons and 311 call center reps. The community liaisons, most people interact with in person because they are the ones who you see at local NRZ meetings, community town halls, community events, etc. And so their job is really to connect city residents with those local resources, constantly looking for ways to help. Our 311 call center reps are on the phone Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. They are the ones taking your request for service and making sure that they are getting to the right department. They are following up on those requests on behalf of residents to ensure that the service is being provided, as well as just finding information for residents. We task our team for being the one-stop call from residents, so that one, we can provide the information, and two, making sure that they get to the right person or the right resource the first time. So that's what we spend most of our time doing. And then we try to use that data that comes in terms of what are the concerns that we're hearing in the neighborhoods, what are the type of issues that are coming in. A good example of that is that we share heat maps actually with the Department of Health and Human Services when we hear rodent calls, so they can see where some of those concerns are coming in. We know that a lot of residents have concerns about rodent population, which has exploded over the last year or so, and we're able to see those calls. And I think that's why we constantly encourage residents to call us at the 311 call center, so that we're able to track and have that information available.
And so Janice, your staff also, I mean, your staff handles things like scheduling COVID tests as well?
Yes, you know, with adjusted with the pandemic, we all have to adapt the things we do. So our team controls the schedule for the Arroyo Testing Center that and currently being run by CVS, and so we can schedule COVID appointments for actually anyone who lives in the state of Connecticut.
And probably maybe worth, given the time that we're living in, just pointing out what that is. It's
the Royal Center, yes, it is at Pope Park. And so individuals can call us 860-757-9311. And we schedule those appointments between the Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Individuals can get a rapid COVID test. We encourage individuals to schedule an appointment. There is room for walk-ins, but we encourage everyone to schedule that appointment.
And folks typically get results in a half an hour, I think, if I understand right. Is there an age limit on who can get tested?
If I remember correctly, it is 5. I believe it's 5 and up. And we can certainly, that information is available on our website. Individuals can wait around for their results. They get it in about 30 minutes, but they also get that information through the CVS My Chart. So they actually do not have to wait. If they provide an email address, they can actually get tested, and then that information will be delivered to their inbox.
And so thank you for that. I mean, obviously it's important information right now, so I thought it was worth just reiterating that a little bit more. Community engagement. Community engagement means a lot of things to a lot of people. As the director of community engagement, what does that mean to you?
It means finding ways to connect and be available for residents to have that line of communication through their municipal government. So whether that is attending neighborhood meetings, whether that is getting phone calls from individuals looking for information, putting information out on social media, doing newsletters, it's about understanding and finding ways to connect with residents so that you can address their concerns or answer the questions that they may have. So it's all about being available to our residents. And oftentimes it's not limited 8 to 5 p.m.
And I am one of the lucky people that gets your office's weekly information, your weekly newsletter that goes out, that puts out a ton of information as to what goes on in the city. For someone who doesn't actively get that, how does one of my neighbors, one of our neighbors, go about getting on that list?
So we actually created, so anyone can call us. We find that that is usually one of the easiest way, as we know that several individuals may have technology challenges. You can simply call us and we are happy to add you to our distribution list. Again, 860-757-9311 is the easiest way to reach us. We also post the weekly newsletter on our Facebook page at Hartford 311. We keep an archive of all of the weekly newsletter right on our city's website, hartfordct.gov. You can just type in One Hartford and one of the first things you will see pop up is newsletter archive. So we try our best to make that information available, as well as my team has the information handy and try to bring most of that information with them to neighborhood meetings. I think one of our blessings in our office is that we have so many community partners who reshare that information and pass that information along to their distribution list and to the people they serve as well.
And your department, I think, arguably is one that interacts the most with residents. We've heard even sometimes, maybe not even City of Hartford residents, but because your department is so successful, neighbors have started trying to come to your service as well. What are maybe some of the interesting statistics? We saw a little bit about the number of calls that you received. What are things that you find interesting about that?
So we do get a lot of calls, and I think one of the things that we've learned during the pandemic is the need for access to individuals on the call. And we've been grateful to get approval to increase our staff to accommodate. Most of our calls is for information, and oftentimes it might not be information needed directly related to the city. Sometimes we have to redirect individuals to the state, sometimes back to their local employer, to legal aid. But it's just interesting. I think oftentimes people want to call and just have someone listen. I think that in the next lifetime, or maybe next week, I might earn a degree in psychology. Just kidding. But it's just, sometimes people just want someone to listen to them. I actually got an interesting call from a lady this past week, and I was trying to, I said, and she was talking, I said, okay, how can I help? And she went on, and I was like, okay, that, is a private agency. And we can't necessarily make them do anything, but we're happy to have the discussion or hear some suggestion. And, at the end, it was really thanks for listening. And so it's heartwarming to know that individuals have that understanding that they can call our office and get someone to listen to them and clarify where they need to go and what they need to do.
And I've always been appreciative of you listening and your staff listening to some of my, I'll say, concerns. I've had a chance to interact with many of your staff and yourself, as you know. With that being said, we talked about there's maybe kind of two different types of calls, right? There's the I need a question answered, but then there's also the call 311 of I need resolution to an issue, whether it's somebody left a mattress out in front of their house, or there's a pothole, or there's a street light out. There are other things maybe that trigger a ticket or a tag or something that has to be responded to. In those cases, is there a general length of response time? I mean, if I put in a call today, can I expect my issue to be resolved in an hour? And we live in this time of instant gratification, right? Can I expect that mattress is going to be gone in an hour, or what's maybe an average response time?
So while I will certainly like to be like Ron from Park and Recs, Thea and Mike Looney has said no. So it really depends on what the request is. So when it comes to items like a pothole, our DPW team is usually very efficient with it and respond in about three to 5 days to get that pothole filled. I think what some of the confusion comes around is understanding it's never really an ordinary pothole, right? Think things are always interesting because sometimes they may go out and that pothole may be a sinkhole caused by the infrastructure underneath the street. So that takes a little bit longer. There's work that needs to be done to figure out why the road is sinking. So again, it all depends. Our team, whenever a request is put in, it gives you the average response time, and that's based on some common things that are happening. Something like a mattress, we schedule it for the team to go out. When they're en route, that's added to the list. So it all depends on what the request is. If it's for housing and something urgent, usually the inspector will call that tenant within 24 to 48 hours. If it's not urgent, it could be 3 to 5 days. And so again, it all depends on what the issue is. But I think one of the most important things that we try to share with residents is if you use the 311 system, it generates a case number, and we're able to follow that case number along rather than just talking to someone in our office and then the call goes, well, who did you talk to? When did you talk to them? With calling the 311 system, I'm able to know exactly the date and time you called. If the resident put it in themselves, I can see who put it in. If they spoke to one of my staff members, I can see who took the call. I can see who it was assigned to within a department, what is the estimated response time, and then we can follow up and advocate on that resident's behalf for response.
Well, and my understanding is, some of the examples you talked about, potholes being a great one. When we talk about sinkholes and is it related to utilities, a lot of the utilities in the city of Hartford are not actually owned by the city of Hartford. So my understanding is you also then have to juggle dealing with other departments, whether it's MDC because they've got a leaking water main or storm sewer, or Eversource because a street light is out. So you're not just dealing with the city of Hartford departments, right? I mean, you're also kind of juggling coordination with other entities as well.
Yes, and we have a great partnership. As you saw from one of the slides that Thea mentioned in terms of our request for service. So DPW is one of our biggest customers and one of our biggest partners in terms of department-wide serving residents. And so oftentimes those service that we get require partnership with other utility owners, right? So if not all utilities within the city of Hartford is owned by someone else, right? So whether we're working with MDC, CNG, something as tricky as, the street lights. Oftentimes residents says, well, I submit that, yesterday and the street light is out. And it's like, well, when it comes to what you see on the electrical poles, those all belong to, for the most part, Eversource. The only street lights that belong to the city are the black decorative poles that you see near our parks and, sometimes some of our business quarters. Those are the ones that belong to a city. So it all takes partnership, and they may have their own priorities. On our end, we're pushing our priorities because of course our residents are number one and you have to respond to them right away. And so it's managing all of that and then setting expectations with residents. One of the things that we try to do with my staff specifically, we started a series where we invite individuals from different departments to come in and talk to my team to help them better understand what they do, the challenges that they face, and what are some of the resources that go into responding, so that we can better explain to the residents why something may take as long as it does, or why they haven't seen responses. We can add notes and feedback to some of their cases, because again, we all have a tendency to want instant gratification. We want it done right then and there, and we try to explain sometimes it's not always the case. And while we would love to do that, we have to follow the rules, we have to follow the guidelines. I think one of the biggest ones we see around that is when someone reports like an overgrown property, right? And so they're like, why doesn't the city just go in and clear it? And it's like, we can't, because we can't violate that property owner's right unless we give them a certain amount of time to respond. Then the city can have the authority to go in and do what needs to be done. And so we try to explain that as best we can to residents. But again, once we have that case number, we can follow through. We can hold our team accountable. We can hold ourselves accountable, and then we can hold the entity truly responsible for fixing the issue responsible as well.
And you touched on this briefly earlier, but let's expand on it a little bit more, because I think it's important. It's something we probably both hear a lot. How does someone has put in a 311 ticket or a 311 issue, and we understand that, you know, not everything can be resolved in an hour. Very few things can be resolved in a day. How does someone follow up to see what the status is? I mean, how does someone know that their ticket hasn't just been forgotten or, you know, ignored? How do they know where the status is and if it's going to be resolved and when?
So that's a great question. And so whenever someone calls into our team, they get a case number. We encourage individuals to hold on to that case number, write it down. For the most part, if we are given the address that the issue is submitted in, most times we can find it if it's not too many in the system. And so with that case number, individuals can actually look it up themselves online. They can, you know, if you just go to hartfordct.gov actually /311, it will take you to our page online, or you can call our team. It's what our team is there for. They can look up the case number. They can see who the individual from the department is assigned to that case. And if there's not information within that actual case on the system, they can make a phone call and they can find out what is the status, what is the update, and pass that information on to the resident. You know, one of the things, the questions you posed to Thea is about systems. So currently not all of our systems tie together. So sometimes the systems that use to manage the actual work that's getting done is not tied to our 311 system. So a quick phone call from our team to the individuals responsible for that particular job can tell us where it is, what's the status, what's the expected date of completion, if there's any obstacles that they run into, and then we can update the resident.
Are updates also available on the Hartford 311 app? I know there's a pretty healthy app that's available for phones as well.
Yeah, so we do have a 311 app that individuals can download. We have worked with our departments to add comments into the cases. So within the comment section, we encourage our team to put that information right into the work order, so anyone who pulls it up can see it.
Janice, you know, being in charge of community engagement, I think a question that I often hear is from my neighbors, from our neighbors, is how do I get involved? How do I get more involved in the city? You know, where do I start? How do I be a part of this city more? What would be your thoughts on that?
So I think there is a few ways. So, you know, one of the things that I try to explain to residents, there are only so many of us, right? And so you can only imagine the number of phone calls that we get and trying to respond to each resident individually. But I truly enjoy when I'm able to attend a neighborhood meeting, so the neighborhood NRZ, and have a discussion with residents, right? And so as city employees, and even within my job for community engagement, I'm trying to take the information that I'm hearing and bring it back to the department to say, these are the things that are of concerns in the neighborhood. So it's more impactful to me when I can have a neighborhood discussions with a group of individuals from that neighborhood saying, this is what we want, versus 10 phone calls from 10 individuals telling me 10 different things that they want, right? Because at that neighborhood group, they're discussing it, they're prioritizing it, they're saying, okay, let's put this in order and let's give you our top 3. So I think a great way to get involved is at your neighborhood NRZ. Those NRZs, they have bylaws, they have city ordinances, state ordinances that they're supposed to comply with. So individuals have the control to make their NRZ what they want it to be. The power is truly in the hands of the residents, and myself and someone from my team, my community liaisons, are assigned to every NRZ in the city. And our job is to go in, bring information, but also listen, right? So answer questions where we can, listen to what individuals are discussing, what are challenges, what are priorities, what do they want? And then we take that information back and we present it at the mayor's leadership team, to the mayor, to our COO, to our department head, to say, hey, this thing is becoming an issue in the neighborhood. What can we do to address it? Or how do we begin to have that conversation before it becomes a bigger issue? Other ways that individuals can get involved, we have this Love Hartford initiative that we started. It grew from the Love Your Block grant, so that falls on there. If individuals want to get together with their neighbors to do beautification projects in their neighborhood, we have grant opportunities to support that. We just had Love Hartford Week. We have the neighborhood cleanup trailer where you can adopt the block and help beautifying your neighborhood. Or you can just call our office, call my office. You can call me directly, email me, let me know what you're interested in, and I'm happy to connect you to your neighborhood group. Or connect you to someone who's done neighborhood projects before. Frog Hollow is on this task to have the most Love Your Block projects, and I'm challenging other neighborhoods. The Love Hartford Week that we had, we saw the Maple Avenue NRZ bring out over 50 volunteers and earn $2,500 towards their neighborhood. So there are a lot of fun ways. I know that there are a lot of bigger issues in the city to tackle, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of quality of life and beautification and improvements that each of us can do each day. A simple thing as, not putting your leaves in the street and putting it on the curb so DPW can get it. Just a little plug there. But there are little things that we can all do. And I think we can all start having those conversations at our neighborhood level. And so that information rises to both of our elected officials and our department heads.
Well, and I'll just make one more mention of the boards and commissions, because there are, a huge number of openings on board and commissions. And then I'll put in, just reiterate your plug for the NRZs. When my wife and I transplanted here back almost 15 years ago, the NRZ was where we started to not only get involved and understand what was going on in the city, having that regular attendee from the city of Hartford, i.e. Janice or one of her staff, but also from the police and from the fire department. And it also is just a great way to meet your neighbors. And the NRCs really are made up of a collaboration of not just residents. So also if you're a business owner in an NRC, you can join. If you're a nonprofit. So there's a variety of people that are involved with the NRCs. And I always put in that plug too as a great way to start and get started in getting more involved in the community, in our community. So Janice, thank you as well for all the work that you do. There are several, I say unsung heroes, people that we just don't think about or know about as much as we should, that keep our city moving forward and progressing forward in the positive way that it has been for the last several years. And when I look at the panelists here, all four of you represent that, right? And then to have all four of you working together and working collaboratively is really just a force that is such a positive thing for our city. And I just want to again say thank you to all four of you for all the work that you do, all the long hours you put in, all the efforts that you make to continue to make our neighborhoods a better place and a more livable place. And I know for a fact that all four of you don't hear thank you enough. So I will continue to say thank you again. Please keep it up. We need you. And thank you so much for being here and for your time this morning. And with that, Marion, I will give you the last few minutes and say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this today.
Well, I am going to say thank you to all of you. This was an energizing, informational session that I think is valuable to all of Hartford residents. So I'm so happy that you all agreed to participate. And Erin, thank you so much for your fabulous moderation of this panel. So what is next? I'm going to share my screen to say that where we're going with this is we do have another webinar coming up. But before I say that, Mary has put in the chat the survey link, and we'd like for everyone to take the survey because that helps us to improve our upcoming programs and also to make sure the programs are relevant to our residents. So our next webinar is on the Department of Development Services, and we will be having 2 webinars on those. One will be on planning and zoning and housing and blight remediation. And the other one, which comes in February, will be on economic development. So the registration is here on this slide, as well as in the PowerPoint presentation that you will get, but it's also on our website as well. The video of today's program will be made available at a later date, and we will also be sending out some follow-up information, including the slides, to everyone. So again, I want to thank the Hartford Foundation for making this possible. And most of all, I want to thank today's panelists, Thea Montenez, Alexandra Lombardi, Marlene Fleeting, and Janice Castle. And Alexandra and Marlene, it's been nice meeting you for the first time, and we hope to have some interaction again. I also want to thank today's interpreters, Albert and Otelia from Interpreters and Translators Inc. in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And I also like to thank Erin Gill again for moderating, and Mary Falvey for hosting and posting everything into the chat. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our program committee, Jack Antonich, Janice Castle, and Emily Lugo. So today is Saturday, it's 11:30. We have done it. We have managed to begin and end. And I want to thank all of you for engaging with us to learn how to better use our resources within the city of Hartford. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And congratulations for a great meeting. Thank you.